I'm rolling.
Hi everyone, my name's Dave Rigby. I've been a stuntman and actor in Montreal for the past 32 years. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So David, tell me, how did you start out? How did you become a stunt performer?
Well, it all started by accident. Before I was in this industry, I was an apprentice textile engineer in Montreal. I had to perform a lot of time study on ladies, making ladies' garments and design floor plans and change all their work loads around, and they actually hated me. They didn't like me. And growing up, I was a kid who needed a lot of attention. So during the summertime, I would leave for 2 months, and I would go racing. I liked driving fast cars. Realizing that the crowds loved accidents more than they loved seeing a winner, and the fact that I had engineering experience, I started designing equipment to flip cars, put cars over school buses, put cars over tractor trailers. I think by 1978, I broke the world record for the longest car jump in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Over 2 tractor trailers, end to end. And then one day, I was in Montreal, in a garage in Ville-Salle, getting a piece of my equipment welded, and this gentleman came up to me and said, "Can you tell me what this is for?" I said, "This is a show I do on the road, and I travel throughout U.S. and Canada as a feature attraction, doing stunts." And he said, "Do you know how to jump over a car trailer, a car carrier?" I said, "What, they're only 60 feet? I could 2 of them," I said, "if you want." On Beaubien Street, I said, "Beaubien Street, drag strip, it's no difference to me." That was on the movie called Gas with Donald Sutherland and Howie Mandel. Crazy movie. That was my first film job. And they just couldn't believe that I could take a car, it was an old Thunderbird, fly over a car carrier and land at an intersection and set up all the cameras for it also, for speeds and distances, and so they didn't lose the shot. That impressed them a lot. And since that day, I have never gone back to a racetrack except to play or an engineering job or picked up a stopwatch. And nobody's been annoyed at me, and I got all the attention I needed.
That's an extraordinary story. What's the scariest moment as a stunt performer you've ever had?
Probably, no, it's nervous, scary, nervous, on the Sum of All Fears. For those of you who have seen it, there was a nuclear bomb at the Super Bowl. And I was part of the presidential motorcade driving the last Secret Service Suburban out here on Highway 50 at Mirabel when the nuclear blast hit the motorcade. There was 4 of us. We were all driving at 80 miles an hour, and we hit a nitrogen ratchet inside the vehicle, and instantly it flipped the car. And I believe I rolled 8 times over 200 feet. From Highway 50 going to Lachute, and I landed on Highway 50 back to Montreal. It was a good payday. But I did change my insurance the night before, my beneficiary.
Speaking of insurance, what do you think about Actor Fraternal Benefit Society?
Well, I think it's one of the best insurance policies I've ever had, and anybody could have, providing you're in gold and you're lucky enough to be working consistently enough to be there. It's great. I've had to use it many times. One time when I on a French film, I broke my back, compressed 3 vertebrae, and I was out of work for 3 months. And their weekly indemnity, it was $3,000 a month or something. It sure came in handy.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel pride that it's owned by members?
Definitely, it's great that it's owned by members, and it's run by our executive committee, obviously, and Yes, it's great. You can't get how can we say, in other life insurance policies, somebody asks, I have experience with other insurance policies through friends I was with. And for instance, a lady who I know I went out with for 8 years who had cancer, she had such a hard time just talking to somebody. Mm-hmm. Just getting on the phone. It was always deterred. Insurance company, other than what's owned by our members, they don't want to pay you.
That's right. It's such an interesting story how you got into it through your own hobby, so to speak. But did you meet any stunt coordinators early on in your career that were good mentors to you, strong influences?
Yeah, two of them, actually. One was James Arnett, and the other one was Terry Leonard. Yeah. Terry Leonard, you might know, he was the gentleman who, on Raiders of the Lost Ark, was dragging under the vehicle like they did in the old Western movie. Right. And I've worked actually I've saved his butt a few times. Once in Toronto on a class of '84. Mm-hmm. We had to flip a car on Yonge and Elm Street. Mm-hmm. And not everybody who does these dangerous car stunts like I do, and if you haven't done it often enough, you never get comfortable with it. The fact that I had done so many on racetracks where being on a mark or being precise, it didn't matter. As long as the car crashed, the crowd loved it. But through my career on the racetracks, I developed a system where I knew which cars did which, how far they went, at what speeds they'd go here or there, and how they reacted. By the time I got into the film business, the knowledge I had and the technical and the dynamics of cars worked in my favor. Mm-hmm. Because I could tell a DOP exactly where to set up his cameras. And as an example, for anybody who's seen The Strange Brew, I did a van jump on there over 120 feet out into Lake Ontario, and I set up every camera, and it was just like they just were in awe because they couldn't believe somebody was driving it. I engineered that stunt. I didn't drive that day because the Harbors Board wouldn't let me because I didn't have a diver's license. So I had to hire another driver, but I trained him, and I used all my equipment, the same equipment that I used on a racetrack, and we just camouflaged it with big T-chests on the dock and whatever, and did exactly the same thing, and it was.
So, have you been able to have the satisfaction of becoming a mentor to other stuntmen, younger stuntmen and women?
Well, in fact, when I started, it was a joke in Montreal. When the Americans would come to town, they would literally behind our backs ridicule us, or those that were here. And actually, the pioneers were the Fourniers. Mm-hmm. And if I know Yves today, who's still in the business, in more on the French side. But because of my ego, I guess, I said to myself, I'm going to do something about this. And I could see that we needed a whole new demographic of people with talents and technical abilities. And they started coming to me, actually. People like Jean Frenette, Stéphane Lefebvre, Marc Desordi, John Walsh. All of those, I gave them their very, 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 very first day's work. And today they're richer than I am, and they're doing very, very well. We consistently work all the time.
Yeah. I remember my first film experiences in the 70s and acting, and I did some of my own stunt work. And I remember that whole dynamic of the Americans coming up and going, you guys don't know how to do it. And the tenacity of the Canadian stunt people just saying, just watch us. was
Yeah,
kind of
well,
cool.
today is much different. Today, the Americans call us to go there in some of our specialties, especially when it comes to films like 300 and Assassin's Creed, where we have very technical fighting abilities and high wire, not high wire work, but wire work, where you see us all flipping up walls and motion capture and on green screen, where we're climbing up green walls, and when you see us, we're actually up church steeples.
Yeah, that's great. What's some of the funniest or most absurd things that you've come across in the business in your years?
Funny is, I can relate. There's so many funny stories. I mean, I can think of stories with Richard Harris, with Jack Palance. That's how far I go back. And
Right.
I'll tell you one with Richard Harris, our dear friend who's deceased. But we were shooting Martin's Day in Toronto. And the story goes that he escaped from jail and he kidnapped a kid, Justin Henry, who's now probably 50. But then he was like 12 or 13 years old. And he became great friends, like father-son type of thing. And we were doing a scene on a hill in a country gas station. And Richard had to go out and make a phone call in the script. And the car started rolling down the hill, which it was supposed to do. I, as the stunt person, was blind driving, and I was lying on the floor, and I had a hole in the floor, and I could follow the shoulder of the road where the gravel met the pavement. So I was steering it like that. But the mother of Justin was on set, and we don't have time to go and explain to everybody what we're shooting. And she sees the kid in the back of this car screaming, which he was supposed to do. And then Richard calls out of the phone booth, chasing him. And then the mother starts going down the road, chasing all of them. And Richard was not in the best of shape in those days. And, he had to run probably a 16th of a mile it was a good bit. And he was so annoyed that he had to shoot the scene all over in the movie. And the mother was so embarrassed because, it was all under control, but she just didn't know it.
Right.
It was hilarious that day on the set. But there's been a few. I just can't remember all of them.
Well, that's funny. What advice would you give to a young performer starting out?
An actor? I would say to keep his regular job if he's an actor, unless he's totally very talented and becomes famous in a hurry, then it's fine. But if you're just acting, versus a stunt guy, for instance, I have to audition for stunt acting roles. But I don't have to I don't have to audition to be a stunt person. They know my abilities, they know what I do, and a lot of stunt roles are nondescript, which means it doesn't matter who's doing what or who's driving in the car chase or who's getting killed. You're just getting killed. So I would say I would probably, out of 10 auditions, I'd get 8, where an actor might get 1 out of 10. So just practice your trade and be polite. Don't get annoyed and angry at anybody. Keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. And do not judge anyone, from a PA to the executive producer, when you're starting out, or get them annoyed or say anything bad to them, because in 5 years, this could be your production manager or your line producer. And the mistakes you make early will carry on your whole career and cost you.
It's true. Good advice.
It is.
Do you have any particular financial advice you would give?
Yes, keep all your money in your RRSPs. Don't take any of it out like I did. If I'd have kept mine in, I'd have a Lamborghini outside. Instead, I have a Mazda. But in 30 years, it's been great. But I've gone through the 80s. In the 80s, a lot of people were caught up in the I wouldn't say entertainment, I'd say the partying, and there was a lot of drug use, and a lot of producers persuaded it, paid for it, and as a matter of fact, if you weren't in compliance and you were a goody two-shoes, your chances of getting hired on a set where that was going on, they kind of pushed you away because they were too afraid of somebody that was good and straight that they squeal on the rest of the gang. And of course now it's totally different because we've lost so many great entertainers and actors and stunt performers from
Do you
that type of...
is there such a thing as retirement?
I don't think that anybody should retire. I know I can't retire because if the minute I have a hard time managing my psychological and emotional affairs in between jobs, because when I'm on set, I'm active. My brain's active. My body's active. My everything is you're alive and excited and full of adrenaline and just being there. Retiring, if you do retire, I mean, I suggest you find something else to do as a hobby. Like, for instance, what I do when I'm not working, I refinish antiques. And I find it very, very therapeutic to take a beautiful piece of furniture that somebody's painted and bring it back to its original look and just see the look on the customer's face when it's done. They can't believe how did you do that?
Well, that's creative, though, isn't it? I mean, you would agree that emotional intensity is part of being creative?
Oh, definitely.
So you find with doing restoring antique furniture and a
creative. It's bringing something back to life again. It's bringing it, and it keeps you young, keeps you active, keeps your brain active, keeps your ego active.
And you from where you started out and how you kind of definitely accidentally stumbled into the entertainment business, would you say that that's the best life you could have ever had?
If I had a choice, I'm not sure. I probably would have loved to have been a Formula One driver, but this is the next best thing.
Right.
And because I love the craft, and I love driving, and for some reason or other, I just have this natural ability that other people don't have, that other people might have in martial arts, that other people might have in playing a musical instrument. To me, getting into a car is like having breakfast in the morning, and turning it upside down and sideways is just like going to work, coming home and having dinner as if nothing happened.
Right.
No, I love it. I wish there was a lot more of it, but.
Do you consider yourself a storyteller in what you do?
Well,
I mean, each gag is a story in itself, right?
well, definitely. So there's hundreds and thousands of them. The most stories that I've been asked to tell is what you just asked me, how do I start? But if you're at a rap party and somebody wants to hear a story, and they know who you are and what you do, it's strange. Everyone believes they can be a stunt person, and they want to be. So what they do is they just, especially after they've had a few pints, they'll tell you stories that I'm not afraid of anything. I'll crash into anything. Well, that's the last person you ever want to get, a stunt person. But I learned very early at different social events that if anybody asks me what I do for a living, I tell them I'm a plumber. And I don't think anybody wants a job cleaning toilets.
So
they kind of leave me alone for a while.
Oh, that's funny. So, you're fulfilled with what you've done?
Yes. I think if I look at my resume and I see almost 200 feature films, I've traveled around the world. I've worked in Africa, I've worked in Amsterdam, I've worked in the Isle of Man. I've worked with some very, very beautiful, famous actors, and some not so beautiful and not so nice. But let me reminisce on The Human Stain, for instance. I had a scene to do with Anthony Hopkins, Nicole Kidman, and Ed Harris in the same scene. And even our rehearsals were closed. But to have the energy of those three actors in a room and doing their dialogue, you could feel the energy. It was incredible experience, that particular one. And of course, Richard Harris in Africa was such a funny, laughing guy. And there's not much to do in Africa when you're wrapped, except go back to a brick jail cell. That's what we were in Shaba at the reserve. So it's a place where you'd want to stay a week and go on a safari, not 3 months. But it was a wonderful experience. And you want to hear another, I'll tell you one more funny story. There was a first AD from Toronto, John Board. He was a happy-go-lucky guy. And I'm sure you've seen on set where some of the staff wear in different clothes. Like he'd wear a big flowered hat, a big Hawaiian shirt, shorts that looked like, and Richard was dressed in his wardrobe as George Adamson, the gentleman who would rehabilitate lions. So he's in his wardrobe. And one day, he came on set, and John had changed his whole day. His lines, his whole day was changed, and nobody told him. Well, if you can imagine being in the bush, which is like looking out at the North Atlantic Ocean, it just never ends. And you had a couple of hundred crew that were around both of them. And as Richard started to haul up his verbal abuse at him for changing his day, the people just spread back and spread back and spread back. And the only two people left in this whole vast bush was Richard, who looked like Jesus Christ at the time, the way he was dressed, and John Board, who looked like from the Shriners Circus, screaming and yelling at each other. It was a picture that I have in my head, and it'll never leave me.
Tell me, who was the greatest artist you've ever worked with?
That's a good one. I've worked with some good ones, but the one that really stands out is I think it would be either Morgan Freeman or Anthony Hopkins. Both of them gentlemen. Both of them so natural at acting and just not pompous whatsoever. Just good people, grateful for where they are today and what they have and where they've been, and humble and great people to work with.
That's awesome. Just a couple of more things. Are you proud that a bunch of actors started their own insurance company? Does that make you proud that you're part of that?
Well, I'm proud that I'm part of Actor Fraternal. I'm very, very happy to have that type of insurance today from my career, where this wouldn't happen in another career at all. I guess every part of any enterprise has its pros and cons. And I must admit, I've been very, very pleased with ACTRA Fraternal, but I've had a few issues. But nothing that couldn't be solved in a day.
With a phone call.
With a phone call.
And you talk to a person.
And you talk to a live person, and they lead you in the right direction. And the issues get solved.
That's fantastic.
Yes, so yes, I'm proud. And as a matter of fact, when I speak of it to other people that I know, they wish they had an insurance policy like we did, and the coverage that we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think that we as an entertainment are part of the entertainment industry, the film industry, TV industry? Do you think we're an important part of Canada, of our society?
I think we're an important part of not just in Canada, definitely. I mean, if you were to take a look, I'm not sure how many members we have across Canada, but the contributions that they make, and when it's spread out, it affects our economies in such a positive way. And so, you know, we contribute so much. Where I've heard people complain about, why spend so much money on a film? Why do they have to smash a new car? Well, first of all, forget about the new car, because it's not new. It's probably a fiberglass body on something else. For instance, if they're on Speed Zone, we were smashing Lamborghinis, but they weren't real Lamborghinis. But otherwise, what they don't think about is the infrastructure that's involved around making a film, from pre-production to post-production, creates so many jobs and so much taxes and so much business for local people, for carpenters, painters, stores, restaurants, you name it. It'll touch somebody somewhere. So, without it, it would be like General Motors closing down, and I doubt the government would want to bail us out.
You got that right.
Because, especially in Quebec.
Can you say for me 4 letters, because we want everybody to say it, AFBS?
AFBS, ACTRA Fraternal Benefit Society.
Can you remember the day you got your ACTRA card?
I can't remember the exact day. I remember the office was on Crescent and Sherbrooke Street.
Right.
And I actually got my ACTRA card on a professional status. I didn't have to go through all the credit, getting the 6 credits, because at that time there was like 4 stunt guys in the city.
Right.
And I just brought out my press kit and news clippings and television shows that I had taped when they were taping shows on 2-inch tape, and I was elected in as a professional, and that's when I started to build the business. And today there's 200 listed stuntmen, probably 75 that are actually working all the time and really, really versatile and everything. And it's changed a lot. We no longer have to worry about Americans coming in and taking our work away from us and joking at us. Now they're very proud of us. And in LA, I mean, some of us have offices and in LA, like Jean Frenette, for instance, where he's always called down there because we train at the stunt stage here in Montreal at the old Canadian Pavilion. We rent that, and we have a facility in there that's strictly for exercise, working out, but also training in fighting, in sword fighting, in kung fu, in karate, in military maneuvers, in high falls, in tumbling. You can't just stay in shape if you want to work as a stunt person and be on the ball. You have to stay in shape, and you have to train and stay up to date, not wait for your next job. So that's what we do there. And now we're soon opening up one in Toronto.
Fantastic. Well, it'll be a great addition.
Definitely. yes.
You know, it's Actra's 70th birthday this year.
I didn't, but
70
I know
years.
now.
Could you say for the camera, happy birthday, happy 70th?
Happy 70th birthday, ACTRA Canada, ACTRA Montreal, and ACTRA members. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good.
Great interview.
Good.
Thank you so much. You know.